Good job, guys. Okay.
Okay. So step one is just defining a really clear subject. I think it's the most important concept of taking any photo. It's the one thing you want your viewer to see. And then for anything else that's in that photo, you want to ask yourself, is this adding to or taking away from my subject? So that is, I think, the most important thing. And this tractor picture I'll show you, I took it from a bunch of different angles and then ended up taking everything else out of that frame and just taking a picture of the tractor. So in garden photography, there's a lot of options for what your subject can be. It can be a flower, it can be an archway or a bench or something that's in your garden. Sometimes the light can be your subject, the sun or the way that it's streaming into the photo. It can be a bug, a person. Nice if it's something that you can move too. A lot of times I'll use a bucket of flowers because I can move that around and create a big statement wherever I want. And so that's a nice way to do it. Or if you don't have a ton of flowers, you could use a vase or something like that. But it's nice when you can pick your flower and then position it towards your light instead of just trying to take a photo of it where it is in your garden. And that or a statue. And then, like I said, every image just needs one main focus, and you want to always identify what is the one thing you want the person looking at your photo to see. And then I always try to also ask myself, how do you want them to feel too? Because I think a lot of good photography makes you feel something. And then what can take away from your subject? Garden stakes are something that we all have, especially when you're growing dahlias. It's hard to not have stakes in your photo. But sometimes it's like, maybe you just need to straighten it or try to move over so that it's not in the photo, or you might not want it like sticking straight out of the middle of the flower. You can position yourself to make it blend in a little bit better, or choose stakes that aren't obnoxious looking when you're planting your dahlias. And then hoses, buckets and vases. I always try to think about the color of the things that I'm choosing and if they complement the color of the flower that I'm photographing. And then creating some kind of contrast in the background. And then this is more for if you're picking the flower and placing it somewhere, but if you put a dark flower on a dark background, there's not really any contrast there. So you can sometimes pick a color, and even if it's hanging a sheet on your wall or something, choosing a wall, it can just create more of a pop for that flower to show up. And then houses, sometimes I know we're all taking photos in front of our houses, so sometimes you can position yourself so the house isn't in the photo. The path, like if you have a path or a patio, you can sometimes use that path to lead up to the flower. Or you can just kind of think about using that for framing so that it's not taken away from what you're taking a picture of. And then fences. And then the first thing before I go to take photos of the farm, I have to declutter it. So that's always the first step. If you're going out in your garden to take pictures, hang up the hose and make sure that there's not tools or buckets laying around. So these are some examples of pictures where I wanted to just show some subjects. One of my practices at the farm is to walk and just kind of notice little combinations and take photos of them. So for this photo, I just noticed these two pairs. And so that was my subject, and it had just rained. And if you know the story of our farm, it was developed by my mom and dad. And my dad planted all these fruit trees, and my mom planted flowers all everywhere. So it's like the utilitarian of my dad, and then it's surrounded by the beauty of what my mom did to that space and the structure that he provided. So that is one example. And this one, it was this red flower. So this is, I think, one of the hardest things to do is take a picture of just a garden and a flower and have that one flower pop out. And so a lot of times I'm looking for light to help me with that. And so you can see there's just this one beam of light that's going down on that flower. So that's how I chose that one flower in this huge mass to be my subject. And then in this next one, again, this was a mass, and I loved the sky was just pretty this morning, but this was the one flower that I wanted in focus, and then the rest is just kind of surrounding it. And then here, like I said, I always use buckets of flowers. So here, the bucket of flowers is my subject, and then my son is holding it, and that just kind of adds a little bit of a story and some emotion to it. And then again, this is one of our workshops. So I'm taking this picture of a bucket, and then she's adding to the story of the photo. She's designing with those flowers, and then the setting is the garden. And then here are some examples of things that I looked through my photos of things that I didn't really love. And these are pictures, again, where I'm taking pictures of flowers, but this I think was supposed to be my subject, but then these were kind of competing. There was a lot of competition for it. So I nulled that. I just kind of called that one. And then this too, there was no contrast. So this, you can't really tell what my subject is here. It just looks like a mass of flowers. And then this one, same thing, kind of, it just, you can't tell exactly what I was taking a photo of. And there's these stakes and things in the way that I just didn't feel like it was it's nothing, the subject's not clear. So that brings us to step 2, which is assessing your light. The things that affect light: time of day, the direction of where the sun is. And like obviously you can't change that, but you can change where you're standing so that where the sun is shining is where you want it to, or sometimes you can pick your flower and move it so the sun is shining the way you want it to. And then sometimes if I have to take photos in the middle of the day, I always try to use shade or wait for a cloud to come over, but it's really hard to take photos in the middle of the day. So I, for sure, 100%, light is the most important thing in creating depth and details in the photos. My goal with the pictures in the farm are that you want to walk into it. You feel like you're walking into the garden or walking down a path. And I can only do that by taking pictures when the light is right. So the times that I always look for are sunrise and sunset. So it's hard to do in the middle of the summer, but fall is a beautiful time and the dahlias are all blooming. So it gets easier to do those sunrise photos as we get into fall. And then sometimes for sunrise, it's called the blue hour. And so sometimes you'll get these really blue skies, which are fun. And then I just have some pictures of sunset too. But the reason for this is that when the sun is overhead, all of the shadows are falling down, and so the photo looks really flat. And when the sun is angled in sunrise or sunset, then the light is illuminated. It faces right onto the flowers, and so it's like shining a flashlight onto them from the side instead of the top. And so you actually see the details on the face of them, and you don't have the harsh shadows that hide the detail. And then these photos were all taken during cloud coverage. So this was midday photos, but it was cloudy. So it works because the sun's not really harsh and creating all these shadows all over the flowers. Here's some more cloud coverage photos. And then these are some examples of photos that are taken during the middle of the day. So you can see that you can't really tell which flower is closer or farther away. You don't feel like you're going to walk into that aisle there. And then this photo here on the left under cloud coverage, that's like almost the same location as this would be in full sun. So it really makes a huge difference. And then sometimes we have to take photos in the middle of the day. And when that's the case, I always look for shade to stage my photos. So, so these are some samples of shade. And then in my yard, I just took some time to walk and put flowers in different locations so I could show you exactly what I mean. So this day, this is just full sun. It's first photo. The second one is open shade, and open shade is my ideal circumstance if it's a fully sunny day, because it gives you enough light where things don't look muddy, but it also doesn't make it so bright and there's no shadows on your flower to hide the details. So open shade would be that the flower is facing towards the sun, and I always look for spots that are, I like to be like towards the edge of the shade if I can choose, instead of being really far from like deep into the shade. And then here's an example of closed shade. So the sun is behind the flower instead of facing it. So this is the same flower in the exact same location. And then this day was like partly sunny and cloudy. So this first picture is full sun, and you can see all the shadows that hide the details of the flower and just make it look flat. And then this second one, I waited for the clouds to come to take the photo. And then here is, again, more comparisons, but this was full sun and then open shade and closed shade. So you can see the difference in the tones for closed shade. The color of the flower is not quite as accurate. And then also it just gets a little bit muddy towards the bottom of the flower with shadows. So that's light. And then step 3 is to create a composition around your subject. And so there's different rules in photography, and I'll go through all of these different rules. But the main thing is that I like to always look at the photo and think about where my eye goes first. And if that's my subject, if my eye goes straight to the subject, then I feel like I nailed it. And then you kind of want it to sweep through the photo instead of just kind of look away. So, or you don't want it to get stuck on one thing either. So I always try to think about my eye movement when I'm editing photos, especially, and try to do anything I can to crop or add or remove light to get the eye to flow through the photo instead of getting stuck. And sometimes that too can help you just make your subject pop. And then I will say, like, rules are sometimes meant to be broken. And sometimes, especially with people, this is my brother-in-law and my 2 nephews, but sometimes with people, like, I would have loved to frame that a little bit better, but you don't want to miss the moment either. And so, so you have to kind of sometimes let go of the rules to capture the moment too. So more true when your subjects are moving than with flowers. But if you have kids in your garden, or if you have bugs in your garden that you're trying to take photos of, you kind of sometimes forego the rules, and then make it work after. So first is the rule of thirds, and that is that each photo should be divided into 3 sections. And it can be divided either horizontal or vertically. And you usually want your subject to be placed on one of those 3rd lines. So in this case, she's on that 3rd line versus being in the middle. And then the other rule would be horizontal. So I have a hard time seeing. But so you'd want the foreground, midground, and then background to be in 3rds. So if that makes sense. It's easier to see that if it's like a horizon shot, where like a beach shot would be an example of that, where you'd have sand and water and sky. But again, that you don't have to always follow that. Rules are meant to be broken, but that's the rule of thirds. And then next is framing. And I always like to look for spots in the garden where there are natural things that frame it. A lot of times it's branches for me. Sometimes if you're standing in an archway, that can help. Or if you're taking a picture of a flower that you picked and you're putting it somewhere, you could like set it in a window and then frame it with the frame of the window. Or you could frame it in a doorway or something like that too. But it's pretty much just using objects in the foreground to frame the subject. And then leading lines, having something that pulls your eye into the subject. We have a lot of paths on our farm, and so that makes it easy for me on the farm. But like anything with lines that pull you into that subject, so you can feel the line of that path pulling you into the subject here. And then one of the other principles is repetition. So I took this picture of just one flower, and then I noticed there were a bunch of them that, and it just felt more interesting, I guess, to add the repetition of that flower since it was an option. But the repetition is just, it can be repeating color. And especially if you have something white in your photo, your eye immediately goes towards white. So sometimes it's nice to have some repetition of white within a photo to carry the eye through. And then, like I already said this, but I always just, my finishing step is to think about how my eye is moving through the photo and make sure that it does land on the subject. And then I always, when I've just taken a photo, before I decide that it's done, I trace my eye around the edge. And sometimes that just helps me catch if I cut something off or if I need to move something out. Like you might catch like just the corner of a bucket, or you might cut someone's foot off. And so just sweeping your eye around the edge helps you to just know if you need to take one more shot with just a slight deviation. And then this last step is polishing your images with editing. I think this is something that is kind of overlooked in photography when people talk about it. But any photo that you see has probably been edited on, if you're looking in a magazine or anywhere else where it's published, any artist or photographer. So you don't always take it perfectly the first time, and there are little things that you can do to make it better. So first is to crop, and I always make sure that my horizon is straight and not a little, sometimes if the horizon's a little bit crooked, it can just make the photograph look messy. There are tools where you can paint light or darkness. It's called dodge and burn. And by adding light in certain spots, it can pull the eye into that spot. And by adding darkness to certain spots, it can kind of take the eye away from it and draw your eye into what you're wanting your viewer to see, or also draw the eye through the picture instead of having it get stuck on one bright spot. There's ways to saturate or desaturate different colors. The one that I do sometimes desaturate is green, especially spring greens can be really bright and yellow, and it's hard to see the contrast of the flowers against that because it's so bright. So sometimes I will pull those greens down a little bit, or sometimes if the flowers are pink and they seem to be more pink that day, I might pull the pink up a little bit just to create more of a contrast between the green and the flowers. And then another thing you can do is correct the exposure by bringing back skies. A lot of times when we're taking a photo of just a sky, then the camera over exposes that photo. And so you may notice if you take a photo of a sunset, then it doesn't feel quite as dramatic when you go back and look at the photo. And so you can correct the exposure for skies, or you can reduce shadows if needed. And then I also like to fix the bug damage, but this is this is an example of a photo that I edited. So the sky was so much different that day. And then the flowers, so the camera overexposed the sky and then it underexposed the flowers. And so by taking light away from the sky and adding light to the foreground on the flowers, it just looked so much more like what I remember seeing that day. And then I know Sharon asked Anna to have me touch on this, but achieving accurate color for dahlias is hard. I know we all know that, especially the reds. And so my suggestions for if you're wanting to do this is to do it in natural light. If you're doing it in the house and you have a light bulb shining, it's going to look warm or cool depending on the light bulb that you're using. So always do it, if you can, always do it outside or use a window for lighting instead of trying to use artificial light. And then in editing, you can adjust the white balance. There's the temperature and the tone, which I'll show you in a few minutes. And then there's also a tool called a gray card that you can use if you do have a professional image or professional camera. I don't have experience with this, but I do know you would take a photo of the card to meter your camera. So your first photo would be that you take just the card with nothing else in it, and then you meter it to 0, and then you would take photos of the flowers. So those are the tools that you can use to do that. And then I wanted to talk too about whether or not, actually, let me show you. I click out of there, and I want to show you some editing while I'm on that topic. So this is the one of the softwares that I use. It's called Lightroom, and you can get it on your phone if you want to, but especially for flowers, we know they can be blemished. And so there's a few tools that I'll show you. The first is to heal the flowers. It's the healing tool. And so it just allows you to click and then remove those little tiny imperfections on the flowers. So that's one tool that is helpful if you're taking photos of dahlias, because we know that bugs love them.
We're still seeing your slideshow.
Oh,
You might need to reshare your screen, Katie.
okay. There we go. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Much better.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for saying something. Okay, so here's the dahlia, and this one was late in the season, and it had had some bugs get it. So, but this is one of the tools I wanted to show you, and it's the healing tool. And it's just, you push this little band-aid, and then you can click on the flower, and the software automatically picks up a place in the image that it thinks resembles the color, and then it helps to heal it. You can actually see the border of that. There's ways to fix that, but that's one tool that I thought it would show everyone. Slow, but like those little dots that just little bug damage, it helps to fix that, especially on macro shots, or if you're so that was one tool that I wanted to show. And then I'll show you what I mean by greens here. So, sorry, I have my mouse on a book, so it's not ideal. So for this image, the first thing I would do is just see how the horizon needs straightened out just a tiny bit. So that would be one. And then if you go down to these mixers, and again, you can, it's an app that you can buy for your phone. So that's why I'm showing it. But you can change the saturation of the green. And sometimes that just helps the flowers and the people stand out a little bit more, especially when sometimes the green can just be really overbearing if the light is right for it. And then, so that's saturation. And you can pull, like for an example, you could make the pinks more, or the purple stand out more. You have to be careful though if you use orange, or red, adjusting those will adjust skin tone too. So you have to be careful with those if you have photos, people. And then sometimes too, with greens, sometimes I'll pull them to just be a little bit more blue too, if that's how I remember them being. But this day, I just know the greens were very saturated and very yellow looking. So that was one thing that I wanted to show you. And then you can also brush light. So there's a brush tool. Is this working for you guys still? I'm getting a warning.
We can still see the two girls.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So the other tools that I like to use are the brush and the dodge and burn. So this is just by increasing the exposure, I'm adding some light to them. And then you can create, so let me show you what I did. And it just kind of pulls the eye. So here it's like everything kind of blends in. It just kind of pulls the eye into the girls. You can do the same thing with flowers. And then you can also do a brush. And there's also this tool, it's called burn and dodge. But you can also just slide the exposure down. Oh, now it's pulling. Sorry. There we go.
Are you changing the exposure on the whole picture when you do that?
No, just the brush. That's the beauty of these brushes is that, and then I would also here, I would burn this too, that foreground, and see how it just kind of,
Yeah, so Katie, there's a little bit of a flash, but for everybody else, do you see where it says like mask 2? And then there's that square. And in that square, you can kind of see a dark area and then a lighter area. So it's kind of masking her photo, and she's able to just kind of color or adjust the lighter area of the mask.
yeah, so they're just brushes, and you can brush the light on, or you can brush shadows on or darkness on. And it just, by doing that, you can pull your eye where you want it to go by using light. So how am I on time? Are we okay for time?
Yeah, you got plenty of time. We started.
Okay. Okay. So that was one tool I wanted to show you, the dodge and burn to make your subject pop. And then here, my computer is slow right now. I wanted to show the sky. This day, the sky was just insane. And when I take the photo, the camera exposed it a little bit brighter. So if I can, my computer is being super slow. But I would create a brush, same idea as the last, where I use a brush to make the sky a little bit darker so that we get some of that color back and some of the clouds. Can pull the highlights down. And I usually would pull clarity up. And so I guess it's not that dramatic, but you can see the difference, that you can now see that it really was a pretty sunset. And then again, I would add another brush here because the flowers look shadowed. And oh, it's not, I think my computer's slower then. So another brush to pull the flowers, the exposure of the flowers up. So that you can see the detail in those. I would spend a lot more time doing this accurately if I were doing it for real, but hopefully that helps you see a little bit about just to see the details. And then here this is a picture of a bud, and I thought those spider webs were so cool on there. This was really early in the morning and there was dew and spider webs on everything. And so here, I'll show you the temperature so you can make it more cool or warm to change the tone of the red. And this is Diva, so this is, to me, this isn't very accurate for the flower that it was. And then you can take it towards green or magenta.
And there are some tools where you can close that center.
All right.
I've done that on many pictures.
Have you wiped? Well, probably you could heal that too, but and then here we can look at these tools that I showed you earlier, like the Diva's more magenta, so that pulls it to be more like what I remember it. That's a little bit truer to color to me. So and then saturation, I could make it a deeper color if I wanted to. Pull that up. And then I didn't talk about luminance, but the luminance is the glow of that color, and it just kind of brightens that color in the image. I wouldn't use it here, but if you were wondering what that one is. So so there's just a very, very quick overview of some of the tools that I do when I'm editing that might help you. Okay, and then back to the PowerPoint. Oh, shoot. Sorry. Okay, so then I wanted to talk a little bit about using a camera versus using a phone. Because we all have phones in our pockets, and so that's really convenient. And so I think that's the huge pro of a phone. It's always with you and it's easy to use. I do use my camera a lot on the farm because I want a lot of control over the depth and the light of the flowers that I'm taking. And then I also, the macro abilities of a camera versus a phone are it's very different. If you're wanting to blow up your photos for like to use on your walls or something like that, then you would want a camera. And then it's fun to play with the lenses too. So it kind of becomes a little bit of an addiction once you start buying lenses. But I mean, I would say you definitely don't need a good camera to take good photos of your flowers, and especially of landscape photos. I think the landscape photos on the phone are wonderful. And sometimes I prefer that over my camera too. But with the phone, you have less control of the depth and the light. So these were pictures. This first one was on my phone. And this, you can just see that I just placed the flower, it's in front of mint, but you can just see that like on the phone, you can tell exactly what the mint is. You can't really control the depth. And then as I go to a longer lens, it gets more blurry in the background. And actually this was the portrait mode, this one. I wanted to show that difference. So that your iPhone does have portrait mode. The thing that I noticed with that though is that it makes pieces fall out of the frame that it doesn't look realistic. Like these petals, I lost some of the edges of the petals. And if I do that with an arrangement and I have like branches or greenery coming out, then I would lose those details by adding portrait mode. And then in this case, it got rid of that vase too. And then the camera, the cons, obviously it's expensive and you have to upload the photos to the camera, where when it's on your phone, it's super simple to send them or edit them. And then there's a learning curve to it. So there was one other thing. Oh, and then the other good thing about the phone that I love is that I can take it like on a boat with my kids and not feel worried about it. But that's the one thing about the cameras that I get really nervous. I would be nervous to take them to like a show or something like that. And then you set your bag down. It just adds an element of stress because it's so expensive and you want to be careful where you leave it and how you're taking care of it. And so here's some photos where I just wanted to walk you through my thought process in taking this photo. And this one, I'll say it again, like just the light. I always walk through and look for the light, and that's where what I gravitate towards. And I know on the farm, and you'll know this in your garden too, you know the times of day that things glow. And so you might have a sunrise garden or you might have a sunset garden, but you'll kind of learn that as you pay attention to the light. But in this photo, I started by having her centered, and then I just took a little step to the left so that this trailer wasn't cut off and so that she was on a third instead of being right in the middle. And then this one, this first photo, I took it. So again, the light caught my eye. And then I thought this was my subject, the girl, the ballerina. But then there was a bench and a tombstone, which is really random. We have a tombstone in the middle of the garden, but we do. And then there was another bench. And so I just felt like there was so much competition for this girl in this photo. And so then I took it again by lowering the camera to get all of this junk out of it. Or I moved my camera up to get all the junk below her out. But then I realized that she's kind of not framed. She's not framed there. And so I took another step to the left, and then I took the picture again, and then her skirt was still falling off. And then I landed here where she's framed by the tree, and I still get that beautiful light and the flowers. But you can just kind of see the process of me moving to that position. So this would be, if I were going to edit one of these, this would be the one that I'd choose, and I would delete those other three. And then here's a picture, like a macro example of which the series of steps that I took towards creating an image. So first it was kind of far away. And so I felt like the subject wasn't clear enough in this first photo. It looked more like a picture of a flower. And then I zoomed in a little bit more. And then the challenge with macro is always nailing the focus on a bug, because you're trying to get this little pinpoint of a slice in space. And so I took a photo, and this is like the leg is in focus here, or the wing maybe. And then here too, you can't really see the face of the bee in this one over here. And then I thought these two were better. So this top one, there was the second bee in the picture. And then this is the one that I ended up using because I thought there was a story to its face being covered in pollen. And so that draws a little bit of emotion out of you. So, and then here's that tractor picture I was telling you about, where I started by taking pictures of the flowers, and then I kind of pulled in towards the tractor, but then I had the greenhouse in there, and finally I stepped forward so that the greenhouse was out of the image, because I just thought it takes away from the tractor. So that's all of my best tips and suggestions for taking good photos of dahlias. Does anyone have questions?
So
I thought you did a great job. There was a lot of great style to it. I think your landscape and broader pictures of things and having people in it are excellent. I did have a question on dahlias. Do you ever use a fill flash?
I don't typically use a flash, no. But again, I don't take photos of dahlias for the way that you may for show. So I don't, but I know that you can get a fill flash. You could even, there are some that are battery powered that you can take outside. I have one. I just haven't used it on dahlias.
I have a ring flash that I use. Also, when
Oh,
you're
okay.
on your cell phone, you can do fill flash and get some excellent results.
Oh, okay. I'll have to try. I'll have to play with that.
And do you play with depth of field, trying to optimize what you're shooting?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't go over that. I don't know. I wasn't sure if, do many people in this group use cameras, or are most people using a cell phone?
We used to use
Or-
cameras.
Used to use cameras? I
We
kind of
used to
assume
use
that most people are
cameras.
using a cell phone, but I may be wrong.
You know, I have a DSLR, but I have had great success with the Samsung S22. And I don't know, I've got a lot of money in lenses and cameras, but the S22 does exceptionally well.
Yeah. The phone cameras are amazing.
So thank you.
Sure. Thanks.
For those of us who have no idea what you're talking about with a fill flash, can you give us a definition?
Oh, maybe, or do you want,
Or Bob,
yeah, so
either one.
it's just it's like an external light source so that you don't have the shadows in the flower. It just fills in the darker parts of the flower. Is that a good way to explain it, Bob?
Yeah,
Thanks.
Very good explanation.
Thank you.
It can be a ring flash or it can be an external source. And what it does is it takes out the shadows inside. And you don't want to shoot it on a bright day. You want to shoot it when it's low light, like she was talking about. So it just, it can enhance the depth of field in the flower. Like I think the one I have in my background, I shot that with a ring flash.
Would that help like on these red flowers where it seems to me when I take a red flower, it just looks like a big red blob?
To me, it comes down to the light source, like she was talking about. So if you're shooting it in a bright light, you don't have much chance of getting the depth of field. So if you have a cloudy day, that's more excellent for flower photography. And then if you put the fill flash on, you'll enhance it slightly.
Okay, thanks.
That's
Yeah,
my opinion.
The challenge I think too with if you use a fill flash, then you're also depending on which one you choose, you might change the color of a red flower a little bit more too though. So, but it would help definitely for a darker flower. It would definitely help you to see more of the detail within it.
My strategy will be to continue to beg flowers from Bob and you, Katie, and Jessica. That
Sounds
works
like
for
a
me.
good one. I like
So,
it.
Just a general comment. I agree with Katie on enhancing or making them better. But in our photo contest, there's 4 categories where you're not allowed to do that. And I think I shared with Sharon one of my yellow flowers that was taken with an insect on it that I thought was excellent. But when I did not submit the enhanced one, which was a insect removal, like Katie was talking about, and then slight adjustments on color, I think it went from a very good picture to a 10. And that's just my opinion, but
Maybe next year we can have some rules that say you can do, I've seen contests where they say you can do minor adjustments, and then of course you have to define minor, but
right.
you know, I'd be open to, especially since so many people have access to these programs. I think we could maybe do a little something different next year.
So on the Android, the Lightroom is a free download right now. So, but it can be complicated. I do not use Lightroom. But right on the Android, there's some free software where you can do some enhancements with sliders. You can do a lot of basic improvements. You can't do the healing, you can't do the stamping, and you can't do zone enhancements. But, you know, for just a tweak, you can go from a 6 to an 8 on a picture, right? Just with a little cleanup and pop it, in my opinion. I like to have fun with flowers. I grow them and photograph them. So
Gives us something to do in the winter. Look at our photos, right?
I do. I photograph landscapes and flowers and waterfalls, and I play with them all winter. So,
All right. Well, thanks guys for having me today. This was
Thanks,
fun.
Kate.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Katie.
I see why you have such
Thank
wonderful
you.
pictures.
very great. It was excellent.
Thanks.
Is Misty still with us?
I think she
Got
left,
the
Jer.
impression she
Oh,
went
she left.
away.
Okay. Because I thought she had a question on the chat, but I didn't see exactly what it was. Thanks, Katie.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
I'll have to, I'm not that far from you. I'll just have to run out and take a look. Thanks so much. Okay, so for a little, I guess time is usually for refreshments, so you could go for refreshments. But without that, Anna, do you have any updates on treasury?
No, for the most part, we're in good shape. We think everything is pretty much buttoned up from all of the prize awards from shows and the rest of it. If anybody has any extraneous expenses from any of the shows or other programs that were through the calendar year, get those to me so I can get everything closed out and ready to go for the year end. And it's time for membership renewals to start. So Nancy's going to have me busy soon, I think.
Yeah, it's that time of year starting. So the ADS has changed their calendar year from January to December to May through the end of April. So we have changed our calendar year to match theirs to keep things simple. So everybody's membership is still will be valid until April 30th. But that doesn't mean we want you to wait till April 30th to renew. So you can do it very easily on the website now. We have PayPal set up. So just visit the website and get your renewal in. We will, as long as you're renewing for DSO, we can also renew your membership with ADX. Make it simple for you.
Thanks, Nancy. How many members do we have right now? Do you know?
There was 208, but we were just starting to get.
What do we own?
It was 208, but we're just starting getting our renewals now. We'll probably have 24 renewed so far, something like that.
Okay. Great. Any questions for Nancy? Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Ron, anything on virus or judging?
No, I guess I'm a little frustrated with the virus situation. Since we discovered we don't have a valid DMV test, the results are really coming slowly. So I think probably everybody's a little frustrated with that. So I'm anxious to have that. And I don't have anything to say about judging, I guess, except to encourage everybody to, everybody who is currently a candidate judge should be thinking about the judging test to get it completed. Maybe the biggest news, I don't know, Tony, leap in here. I feel like the pending release of judging videos, that's not the term they use, but those lessons are going to be wonderful, I think. And they'll be out early next year. Right, Tony, you want to?
Modules,
Modules, right.
early, right after the first of the year, they should be out.
Lots of good stuff in them, for sure.
Yeah, I've seen them. They're really nice.
Ron, on the virus part, is the general rule if you have any mosaic in the leaves, throw
Well,
it in the trash and the tubers?
the one symptom that I, unfailingly either move it to my virus garden or throw it out is chlorosis of the veins, yellowing of the veins. Modeling, I think, is a little harder to pinpoint here. Out in the Northwest, they have pretty obvious TSWV a ring pattern. It's really very clear. And that's another one that I think, is pretty unambiguous. But the mosaic, I find on the subtle side.
Okay, so if you're suspect, I think the general rule is not to put it in your compost pile, to make sure it
Yep.
goes in the trash.
Just put it someplace that it'll rot and not bother your compost or your garden.
Can I throw it somewhere where the deer go so I can get rid of them?
There you go. Sign me up for that.
Anything else for Ron or Tony on virus or judging? Good, thanks, guys. Mike, you just want to say a word about this morning?
Pardon me?
Say a word about this morning.
Oh, yeah. Thanks to Jerry, Bob Matusek, Bob Leonelli, we were able to take Tom Demoline's clumps of tubers and divide them this morning, and he's going to store them for us. Interestingly, he also had some pot roots that he had put in. He had the guys, when they were digging to plant the tubers, put them in I don't know, it's not even a mesh bag. It's a cloth bag almost. It's something that he uses for some of his other shrubs and things. So he put a couple of those in, and when they yanked them out came the bag with the tubers inside of them, just like pot roots, just like he said that they would do it. And some of the roots had already grown through them. So we're just going to put those in that way along with Tony's, which thank you, Tony, again for sending them over. Always in good shape. So we divvied those all up, and Tom will put those in storage, and hopefully we'll start taking a peek at them in March. So I want to thank you guys for coming out and helping. I know we missed one of our guys who's always been out there. So
Yeah.
it was a little different, but everybody picked it up, and we got her done. So that's the way it should be. And that's, I think, the way he'd want it to be. So thanks again.
Tony, do you do anything when you store those pot roots? I mean, you had them in 2 open trays. We were just going to put them back as they were with where Tom stores his stuff. But do you do anything else with them? Do you cover them or anything?
I do, and how you store pot roots really depends, just like storing tubers, on your environmental conditions. If things don't dry out too bad where you put them, where the humidity is pretty high and there's not a lot of drying and ventilation, they'll do fine, over the winter. I think Dave used to just put them down, in his shop, and he never had to. I always put mine, I used to wait until they were like ready to be watered again. And then I would put them in plastic bags so that I could, keep that degree of moisture. If you let them dry out too extensively, especially if you're in 4-inch pots, sometimes you'll start to get shriveling of the tubers because the medium gets too dry. And I never like the soil to get bone dry where it kills all the, sets back the microorganisms. So it's kind of a balancing act depending on where you store them. It's really a complicated question, but I think ideally, I mean, we all see tubers out west when they don't even dig them every year. They'll come back year after year, and there's moisture in the soil all year round, and those tubers don't rot. So I don't think the idea is to get them bone dry. I don't think that's good, but you don't want them wet either, because then you could encourage rot. So you want kind of that happy medium. For me, I wait until I put my finger in them and they're, you know, if they were a living plant, I would water it, and I put plastic bag, grocery bags and twist tie them. And then that keeps the moisture level that way for the number of months.
What
I hope that helps. That's kind of a long explanation, but it's not a yes or no answer, you know.
What condition would you have thought the 2 trays that I picked up from you last night were in?
Well, they were actually drying out. The top inch of the soil was drying out before I left for 10 days. So I watered them and put lightly, just so that it was a superficial watering to stop them from drying out anymore. And then I put that tarp over them to keep them at that level. And I'd probably let them dry out a little bit more than that. And then I would bag them, you know, if I was keeping like the ones I'll keep at home.
So Mike, we may want to talk about
Revisiting them maybe at some point.
yeah, doing something other than just putting the 2 trays back with Tom's stuff.
Right. I'm sure that wouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
I'll give him a buzz one of these and talk with him about getting back over there then, and just telling him what our situation is, what we'd like to do.
Yeah, good. Thank you. As I drove up to, because I took 90 back home, I passed Miller. Did you dig Miller?
I did.
Oh, and those are out there too, or are they at your place?
They're at my place, yeah. Some of those were Dave's. A good
Oh.
quantity of the ones out at Miller's were Dave's.
Okay.
So yeah, I dug some of those. I had one of Tony's, Liz, which was spectacular out there. It just got everybody's. They had 3 blooms all at the same time.
Yeah.
It was absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Do you have
they were,
any pictures from Miller?
I do have some pictures. Yes, I do.
Yeah, send some over. I'd like to put some more current pictures on the website.
Okay, will do. Absolutely. So, yeah, so I dug those and they're all divided and put away already. So,
And you know, if any of the others of you have pictures of your gardens or whatever, and you would like to, I'm sure we can put them up on the website. It'd be nice.
Always looking for pictures.
Yep, cheers. I was looking for pictures. Sharon, could you put up our list of nominations for this coming year? Good, thank you. So I trust you can all read that, okay? So thanks to Jess, let me just quickly read down through the list here, who mentioned to me about several months ago that she would be willing to take over presidency and help me out after 15 years. Of course, Mike did also. Tony,
This is really about.
there you go. Thanks, Tony. And Mike Weber, of course, was president for a couple, in between some of those years that I was president. So thank you very much, Mike and Jess. Treasurer, Anna said she would stay on. And this year, as you know, with Dave's passing, it was a real question as to how we were going to put on these shows this year, because I mean, just Dave did for almost 20 years. He just did everything. I mean, we would help him store his Dahlia mobile, but other than that, he pretty much organized everything. So fortunately, he had some notes on each show, not absolutely complete, but I just kept asking around to people. And I think we now have a good set of notes for each show. And thanks to Mike and Rob Lloyd, who said they would kind of take in charge of of Cuyahoga Fair show, and to Ron and Tom Sobchak for Geauga, Pat Sadataki and Tammy for our annual Summit Mall show, and then Rob Sweeney and my son-in-law Pat Spacuzza for Petites. And I'll be around as, well, I just call myself a show coordinator, and we'll get notes to all of you as the time is appropriate. Sharon on Webmaster, and the web's looking very, very nice. I think she and Jess are doing some work and making it very attractive. Meg is our new digest editor. And thank you, Meg, for your daily information. And then Sharon on ADS reporting, so that we can get all of our blue ribbons to the appropriate ADS people, so that they could be updating the classification book. Bob Matusik and Wenning were just really helpful for me this year in inventory. Right now we have most of our vases and so on, probably about 20 containers worth of stuff at Brant Gear's barn in Brecksville. But we also have another barn closer to Summit Mall, and we'll have most of that the material inventory for Summit Mall at Carol Solly's barn, who's 5 minutes from Summit Mall. Nancy, thank you so much for membership and wanting to continue that. Tony for ADS rep. Elizabeth Hamilton is new to being the writer for our articles for the bulletin, ADS bulletin, and thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that. Joanne said she would continue being Sunshine Chair. Barbara Hosta for Holden Forest and Gardens rep, as well as being our archival and librarian. Mike, hope you continue doing propagation. That is something we do need somebody to help you on that as time goes on. But propagation is just a big job to produce our plants for sale, and I know you put a ton of time in on doing that. It very much appreciated. Pat Sadataki, refreshment chair. If we ever get back, I haven't talked to Jess about what she would like to do for meetings next year, but she would be in charge of refreshments if we do go back to in person. Debbie Finley is in charge of our picnic chair. Bob and Tusek for meetings at Bush. Ron and Tony for our judging co-chairs, doing a good job. And again, I encourage those of you to become judges. You really can grow much better dahlias when you understand how the judging goes and what we're looking for. Thank you, Elizabeth, who, when I asked for a holiday luncheon chair, she said, "Oh, I can do that." But a little late for this year, and I think that there are enough people who are still not really wanting to do much in person that we canceled our holiday luncheon for this year. And Sharon, thanks for looking at our bylaws, and hopefully we'll get those together this year. Two positions still in need of some folks, if you're at all interested. One is just to write up a few notes on each of our meetings as the recording secretary. And then also what I've done the last couple of years is just ask somebody if they would be the facilitator for a program, particularly if we had somebody in mind, and then that person just was in charge of that program and didn't have to do the whole year. So hopefully I'd like to get a chair that kind of oversees each of our programs, but of course that would be up to Jess now. Okay, so that's our leadership team for 2023 and hopefully 24. And we didn't put together a poll, but I guess I'll just put it this way: if you're if anybody is wanting to challenge any of those positions or fill in for those two open ones, let me hear now. And just as my class goes, hearing none, I'll say that we are in favor of that slate. And thank you all so much for keeping DSO the really viable organization and vibrant one that it is. It really, and I think from when we did the national show a couple of years ago, ADS was really quite impressed with the work that we do. Okay.
Hey, Jerry, before you go any further, I think everybody ought to say thanks to you for keeping us going for the last 15 years. Thank you very much.
Well,
Thanks, Mary.
Absolutely.
Thanks to all. I do appreciate that.
Gary, you could always fill in those question marks if you get a little away from what you're doing.
We can't stand it.
Well, thanks, guys. Of course, it takes really well, this whole list and other people too, who really do keep this society going. One other thing before we go to photo, Sharon, Barbara Hosta sent me this message, and that was as the Holden Forest and Garden rep. She just said that Home Forest and Gardens is seeking a new CEO. Currently, the chief financial officer and the marketing manager are co-chairing position right now, but they really want somebody to be full-time. Also, Sharon and she have decorated a wreath for the holiday show at the Botanical Gardens.
And it may be my favorite one we've ever done.
Oh, great. What is the, she went through this whole thing about they
changed the theme like 3 times.
Yes.
So we just kind of held firm and found a way to make our theme hold for whatever they were changing. They started out with bringing the outside in, and then they wanted to do neighborhoods, and then something about architecture. But we did dahlias, dragonflies, and damsels. So we have dahlias and dragonflies on our wreath.
Pictures you can share with us?
I'm sorry?
Do you have some photos you can share with us?
I did take a couple. I'm like the world's worst photographer, so maybe I'll improve a little bit, but we'll try to put something up so you can at least see kind of what we did. But I recommend going down there if you have a chance, because it's really pretty when they have everything all decorated with the trees, and they do mantles and they do doors, and then they do wreaths. So you can get lots of decorating ideas.
When does that start? Do you know, Sharon?
I do not.
Yeah.
But probably pretty soon.
Her third point was because the DSO has participated in the holiday show, the DSO is allocated 6 tickets to see the show for any DSO member that is not currently a Holden Forest and Gardens member. So to use, simply go to the check-in desk at the Botanical Gardens, give them your name and club name. But why don't you, any questions, she says, email Barbara at, and then we'll put her email address up for you. But maybe you ought to check with her before we have a whole flock of people going down for 6 tickets. Okay. Okay, Sharon, do you want to give us the news about the photo contest?
Yes, so I need to get rid of this screen. Is the other screen still on, the photography contest?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, the golf club one, yeah.
golf club guy is still there. Okay, so let's go from the beginning. Now you should have a bigger one.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so first of all, thanks to everybody that submitted photos, obviously, and also the people that took the time to vote, because it's not much of a contest if you don't vote. The results were really interesting this year. And we had 5 categories and had allocated 3 prizes to each category for second and third, $20, $15, and $10. But the votes came out a little bit unusual, as you will see. And if you're wondering why there's a golfer on the front of a photography contest slide set, it's because we're going to do the prizes the way they do them in the golf tournaments. If you're aware of how they do this in the golf tournaments, if 2 people tie for first, they split the prize money for first and second.
Right.
And then the next thing that's open is third. So that's how we're going to allocate the prizes. Not that anybody's going to like really get rich here, but we had to have a scheme. So I decided to go with the golf scheme. So
Golf events I've been at, we have a cutoff.
a cutoff, what do you mean?
Never mind, sorry.
I'm not much of a golfer. I'd like to watch it in the winter when it's dreary here and, you know, they show those beautiful azaleas down south. But at any rate, that's how we're going to allocate money. Okay, so starting with portrait, we have a 4-way tie for second place. And you can see the pictures here. And all of this will be on the website. And this is as good a time as any to tell you that the website looks really different now. Jessica did most of the work to move it to a new platform. So a lot of the information's the same, but it's really different, and
It looks very nice.
a lot of big pictures, and
Yeah.
it's real pretty. So
It is.
this information will hopefully within the next week be out there. And I've got some of the I've got all the portrait pictures out there in a gallery, and we'll get the other galleries out pretty soon. So anyhow, 4-way tie. Congratulations to Jessica, Dennis, Shady Acres, and Ron Miner. And you can see their pictures there.
Yep. Good
So
job.
then, so we don't have a third place because we have all of these second places.
Yeah.
And then first place goes to Bob Leonelli. Congratulations,
nice.
Bob.
Oh,
Yeah.
the guy's a ringer.
Yep. Isn't that gorgeous? That's show and tell, I think.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so our
Good job,
next
Bob.
category is multiples. And here we had a 7-way tie.
Basically, that means, you know, I get about 3 votes.
And so they are going to share all of the prize money for their category. And it comes out to something silly like $643.
Yeah.
$6.43, not 6 cents.
Yeah. Don't spend it
for
all
each
in the same
person.
place.
So,
Okay, as the accountant, I'm rounding in one direction or the other, you crazy.
okay, well, you do
guys.
whatever you want.
We'll work something out. I'm not
I
gonna do
rounded
all
to
this
the
math. This
penny,
is too complicated.
Round up. Okay, so that was multiple, so we didn't have anything else we had to do there. I think other is next, and other came out pretty normal. So we have a third place, Jessica, and I wish she were on the line because this kid has got to be related to her.
Yeah.
No, he's not.
That is actually my son, and he was here just a second ago.
Who's
Oh,
speaking?
I'm
yeah.
Anne.
Boy, he looks just like Jessica to me. It's a dark-
Yes, I can see the resemblance, but he's actually my little mini me.
Oh, and you're training them
Maybe
young.
Jess
This
and
is
I are
important.
long lost sisters.
It's important to train them young.
Yes, he's very excited to get into breeding. So he is Mr. Ron's new friend.
Super. Super. And that's a really adorable picture. Adorable kid and adorable.
Aaron, a quick question. Who was the first place for multiple?
There wasn't one. There were 7 winners, so they're
Okay.
splitting the 3.
Okay,
So they're gonna share
Oh,
for
tie.
second
It
and
was a
third
tie.
prize money,
very good.
per the golf rules. Okay, so others had third place. And then second place was Jessica. And I think that might be a little Miss Judy. I didn't ask her, but that little bee is pretty cute. And first place
Yeah.
almost looks like something from a sci-fi movie to me.
Whoa,
And that goes to Tracy.
very nice.
And next is macro. And here again, macro came out kind of normal. So we have a third place. Congratulations, Ron.
Yeah.
We can see all those little tubulars. You want to tell people what the tubulars are?
I don't know. Tony, do you believe it? Tony and I have been having a discussion about that particular cultivar because if the disc florets are tubular, it qualifies as an anemone.
And that's these little things here.
Yeah.
The conversation is whether they're disc florets or whether they're reproductive part stamens and stamens.
Well, yeah, you sure see the stamens. That's a nice part of the picture, I guess.
Yes, that's what makes it really pretty.
So the yellow are the stamens and the tubulars are the red.
Yep.
So very interesting.
Huh.
Second place goes to Vicky.
Oh, nice.
And somebody questioned whether this was enhanced, but we also grow this silhouette and those little lines are true.
Yeah.
And Jessica won the macro first place.
Oh, neat.
And last but not least, the art category. And this one, we had a 3-way tie for third place. And that's Dennis and Jessica and Vicky. And then we had a tie for first place, so they will split the first and second place money.
Oh, those are nice.
Aren't those interesting?
That was really nice.
Yeah. Like it. Another anemone.
Yeah. So again, the information will be on the website for you to look more closely over time, but congratulations to all the winners.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well done. Good job. Okay, can you, Sharon, can you just unshare?
Yep, as soon as I find it, I will. I'm getting the hang of this. Oh, I know. I have to get out of the full screen. There we go.
Okay, you still have your PowerPoint up. There we go. Good job.
Gone?
Yep.
And is the other one gone too?
Yeah, we have back to gallery.
Okay.
Yep, we're good. Okay, my agenda, we have any Dahlia Q&A. I know not all of us have even dug yet. Bob Lee and Allie just told me this morning. Anybody else not dug yet?
I had blooms on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I shared them with people and they were very happy to get them.
Yeah.
Now I got to pay the penalty of digging it late.
I think it's supposed to get a little bit nice next week though, so
Yeah,
hopefully
just
it won't be out there in the freezing cold.
midweek, but then it's going cold again. And of course,
They'll be out by Wednesday.
Tammy shared some not so good news with us. I don't know if everybody heard or not, but Tammy, it might be, if you don't mind telling us again, just so others can be aware.
I finished up doing all my dahlias and I used the vermiculite and sulfur powder and saran wrap. And I ended up having a reaction to the sulfur powder. I did not wear gloves It did not have a mask on, and I know better, but I ended up in the emergency room with uncontrollable, overall intense itching that wouldn't stop. It took 4 days for us to get it under control.
Whoa.
So just a fair warning about the salt. They concluded it was probably the sulfur powder, but there's no tests to determine that. So that's what we're going with it. I had an allergic reaction to the sulfur powder. So different plan for next year.
Yeah.
It may involve husband.
Wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Even the vermiculite, some of the vermiculite has a lot of mica and some has asbestos in it. So, you know, even something you think is innocuous as vermiculite, you really should wear a mask.
Yeah. So I don't know what that whole toxic environment, whether between the bleach, vermiculite, sulfur powder, it could have been any of those. We're just going with the sulfur, but yeah, change of plans for next year, either just the cinnamon, like Sharon said, or husband's going to be a lot more involved.
And on the vermiculite, if you go for the coarse vermiculite, that helps a little bit,
Yeah.
I think, because you don't have as much dust.
Yes.
And I don't think there's any real good evidence that the sulfur and cinnamon are even necessary. You know, I can remember 30 years ago messing around once or twice with sulfur, and I just decided it was a pain in the can. And I've been storing my dahlias without dusting them with anything for decades, and I don't seem to have any problems. So I think sometimes you make things a lot more complicated than it needs to be. Nobody's dusting those tubers in the ground, you know, and they volunteer and come back. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm glad you're going to just stop doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and all of the time that we've been cutting the tubers up out at Willoway, we've never dusted them and had pretty good success. But I guess we better get masks for the vermiculite next year.
Yeah, that we need to do that anyway.
Yeah.
At least the really fine, you know, I've got this super coarse. It seems, you know, pretty good. The fine does leave the dust. I mean, you could see the dust. Like you also
Where do you get the super coarse?
Gee, you know, I can't remember whether it was up at Gale's or online. It might have been online. I'll have to check it. But it's the course almost, you know, 2/3 the size of a marble.
Yeah, that's probably what Rob gets. He gets it at Gale's.
At Gale's, yeah. Okay, good. Yeah. Hey, Mike, you could also mention you read in Dahlias of Today.
Oh, yeah. I was just skimming through and doing some reading, which I usually don't do. But there was an article in the Dahlias of Today, I think it was the 2022 one, by Ken Greenway about digging and storing his dahlias. And he said he just dug them up, washed them, and put them in vermiculite. Didn't worry about them drying off or anything. He says they don't dry off in the ground. And yeah, I was surprised. He doesn't seem to, you know, dust them with anything. He just pulls them out of the ground, gives them a washing, and throws them in a bag of vermiculite, and away he goes. You know, that kind of reminded me of Glenn Ruth when Glenn did his tubers. I remember we just go over there and dig them up. He wouldn't even knock off some of the dirt. He'd throw them in old crates, throw some old leaves in there, throw them in his cellar, and we'd go over there in the spring to help him cut them up, and they had sprouts all over the place. So I think you're right, Tony. Sometimes maybe we go a little too far.
I don't let mine dry out. I read that with Ken wrote, and I laughed like crazy because he said that dahlia tubers are almost all water, and so hard to dry them out. Actually, all you're doing is curing the skin, but the margin for error there is so small. Sometimes you'll see your smaller tubers start to shrivel. The big ones are okay. Yeah. I rinse mine off. I keep them wet, not wet, but moist, so they look like they've just been washed. And I just throw them right in the perlite. I don't let them dry out.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Saves some time for sure.
I think the trick for Glenn though was having that fruit cellar.
Oh, it was, definitely. Definitely. You go down there and open a window in the dead of winter just to make sure there was some humidity down there.
Well, I mean,
And I think he would say
the.
I would think he would say the oak leaves too, right?
Yeah, the oak
Like-
leaves, that's exactly right. That's the only ones he used. He had a mammoth tree out there, right?
Yeah. And then he would water the floor with, he would just water the floor.
Yeah,
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 it's amazing.
yeah.
I remember seeing, I don't know if you've seen Victory Garden. I don't think it's on anymore, but way back when Philip Swain was the guy. He was the one with the big red bushy beard. They're up in Boston area, or whatever. And he would just go out, dig them up, and shake. I mean, there, of course, the soil was such that you could put your
Right.
down to your elbow. He would just shake them off, throw them in a bag, and say, "See you next spring." And if I did that, they would be absolutely shriveled.
Yeah, and it all goes back to your conditions, like we were talking about with the pot root. I was out at Swan Island and they cut them up and put them in crates and they store them in a cellar, open air with no medium at all. I mean, they just literally have crates of dahlias just with nothing around them. They're just like bulbs sitting in crates, but it's underground and the humidity, they have some fans going to keep it from getting too wet or too humid, but I mean, they have absolutely the perfect amount of humidity and cool temperatures that they don't even need a medium. They can just leave these. And when I was in New Zealand, there were people storing with just crates and some newspapers on top just to keep the rodents from getting them. Yeah, so it's a little more complicated sometimes depending on your condition.
So Kelly, how are you doing? Are you all dug up? Kelly? She's not hearing me.
She's out digging.
She's
No,
not
she's
hearing.
I like how my friend in South Carolina does it. I gave him 12 or 15 plants, stuck them in the ground, and for the last 8 years, he's never had to dig them up, and he gets big bushy dahlia plants with tons of blooms.
Yeah.
I think that's the place to be.
Yeah, so
No digging.
any other questions for the membership? Everybody's okay?
Better.
Okay.
Don't hear any others.
I think we're all waiting to order dahlias.
Well, I just
Well,
saw
Jerry-
that Rivers Dahlias starts tomorrow. Oh, no, it's Sunday.
Well, Jerry, I think this is your last official meeting.
I don't think Clearview is up until December.
December 1st, supposedly.
Yeah. But a lot of those nurseries are they're sold out by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Oh well. Okay, any other questions? Comments?
Is this your last official president's meeting?
Yeah, I guess so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we'll all tip one in your honor, Jerry, for sure.
Thanks, Mike.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, anything? Oh, Ann, you're on. Is that your buddy in the back there? I can't see. Oh, went
That
behind.
is definitely Max, and he was horrified to be on video, and he fell behind the couch.
Mine came in and goes, "Is your video on or is it off?" Like they know now. They don't want anything.
Well,
to do with
it
this.
was off, but then I was gonna say thank you to Jerry, so I turned it on, and then he died behind the couch. So he can hear you.
Well, thanks to all, and hope you have a really great winter looking at catalogs and ordering some tubers for next year. But don't forget our sale also, thanks to Mike and others who will be getting, well, that does remind me, I think Sharon reminded me of this too. And that is to get some tubers in, not only from memberships, but Dave, I remember always got 100 or so from.
Hamilton, wasn't it Hamilton in Michigan?
Well, it used to be, but I don't think more.
I
recently.
think he got them from Allen's.
Oh, that's
Allen-
right. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And
So-
he said that it's not a problem for us to do that again. I did talk to him to make sure that everything was squared up last spring. Because I hadn't heard, normally he would get the order and then let me know what to send. And last year he actually paid himself and hadn't asked yet for reimbursement. So I circled back with Alan to make sure that he had gotten paid for what we ordered from him. So I've got his contact information, so I'll check in with him if we need to go that route again this year.
Yeah, great. Do
His
you
flowers
remember?
grow real well for us.
They really do. And he's got some really nice varieties that he usually includes for us for the sale. So
Yeah. Do you remember when Dave, did he say when Dave usually put in the order, or when was Alan wants the order?
he just said to reach out to him in next, like in the winter or whatever. So I'll go back and check to see.
Could you do that then?
Yep. Yeah, that's no problem.
Thanks, Anna.
It's on the list.
Great, good. And then we'll be asking tubers from membership. Mike, when usually is, we want it in by mid-March?
Yeah, we usually start, the 1st of March, somewhere around there, right?
Okay,
So we've got some quantity of pot roots now. So I think my thought was maybe to focus on not as many varieties, maybe a few less varieties, and try to get some stuff that people, kind of some unique stuff, maybe some old, a couple of year introductions or something, things of that nature that might be a little hard to find. So,
Rob's got some pot roots for you also.
perfect.
oh, good.
So we'll assess, see what we've got, and
How many pot roots did we use last year?
well, we used all the Tonys.
I mean, how many?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think between
Oh.
Tony's and the ones Dave brought, or that were at Dave's.
Okay, 20 or 30?
20 or 30 probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they produce like
we-
crazy.
Yeah, we took a lot of cuttings off those.
Some, yeah, more than we should have.
Yeah.
But,
Good.
so we'll see.
Okay, I see Jess is back. Our new president is back.
All right, guys, I double booked myself with 2 Zoom meetings tonight. So yeah, wrapped up the ADS one. I'm back.
Good.
Hey, one of the thoughts that came up at the dividing at Whirlaway was if members, maybe if they have requests for certain varieties, there should be some way of either some way of communicating to the membership that they're like a request or a trade, or that we propagate it, maybe. That would be a good way of getting the right stuff started out at Whirlaway, or getting them exchanged between members.
Yeah, I certainly would like to have stuff that's going to sell to, for people's needs, right? So,
Maybe if we could get a list of those pot tubers that we do have, I can like make some kind of poll or something and send it out, and then people could
see
say,
if they
like,
have any interest or anything.
right,
Well, yeah, we labeled all the bags, so somebody has to go back out there and get a list.
Hey, Tony, do you know of those bags that Tom Devenline was using? They're really impressive looking.
Yeah, they're not much, they're not, I don't think, too expensive either. He gave me a box and I did a couple myself. And they're pretty, they keep everything pretty self-contained when you pull them out. They're
They
pretty
look
easy.
sturdy,
so-
yeah. They look
So-
sturdy, and the roots were able to
Filter through them, right?
filter through them too. So
So
uh,
hopefully we can get them through the storage process and maybe we
Yeah.
might give that, that might be something for people to look into doing if they want to, we get some pot roots from everybody. If somebody do one or two, we give them some bags, put them in there and see how they come out. That might not be a bad deal.
They also look very easy to pop out of the ground versus.
Well, that's what he said. Yeah. Right.
hey,
So-
Mike, can you check to see where Tom gets those?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let us know, because I think that
Yeah.
would be good.
Something to experiment with, maybe.
Yeah,
We
Right.
need this, I think we need to see what the roots look like in the spring,
yeah.
how
Right.
how tight they are in that. But I think he buys them by the 100,000s.
Probably.
The bags, yeah. And I think he said he used them for some of the shrubs,
Oh,
So, yeah, I can find out where he got them. I don't think that'd be a problem.
great.
So,
Okay, any other comments, questions?
yes, I would like to say one thing.
Yeah.
And I would like to thank and congratulate Jessica for stepping forward. And it's nice that Jerry will be able to enjoy a real retirement now that you're going to step in and take things over. So much appreciated that you've taken on this responsibility.
Good comment, Mike.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Jess and Jerry.
Yeah, you're quite welcome.
I will be reaching out to all of you for help still, including Jerry.
That's good.
All right, anything else from anybody?
Okay.
Hearing none, seeing none. Have a great winter and do keep in touch.
Have a good holiday,
Thanks,
everybody.
thanks, Jerry.
Thank you,
Yep.
everyone.
Happy
Bye.
holidays.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye, Max.
Max,
Yeah, Max, right. Bye, Max.